Hey everyone, welcome back to Glue La La. If you're new here, my name is Jess. Today I have 3 quick and easy fall crafts for you that don't require a whole lot of supplies, but you'll be able to get your home ready for fall while staying on a budget. Alright everyone, let's get started. For the first project, I'm using 2 canvases from the Dollar Tree. I'm using 2 different sizes. The one is 5x7 and the larger one is 8x10. And actually for this project, I'm going to leave the canvas on the frame. I'm not going to remove it this time. So to add a little distressing to these canvases, I'm just going to take the Antique Wax by Waverly and I'm just going to dry brush that all over the outside edges of both canvases. To keep the decorating simple on these canvases, I decided to use some scrapbook paper. So I'm using this collection called A Perfect Autumn, and I picked out 2 prints that I liked and I thought went well together. And I just cut each one down so that it would leave about 1/4 inch border the whole way around. So the smaller one I cut down to 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, and the larger one I cut down to 7 3/4 by 9 3/4. I decided to distress the outside edges of the scrapbook paper too. So I'm using this distress ink by Tim Holtz called Gathered Twigs. And I just have an ink blender there, and so I just dab it on and then I start smudging it all around the outside of the paper. Now, if you don't have an ink blender, you could use a makeup sponge, or if you don't have ink at all, you could actually use the Antique Wax and just kind of dry brush the edges the same way we did on the canvases. Or you could use any other kind of paint too. I just always have a lot of ink in my stash because I do like to do paper crafts too. So that's why I chose to use ink on these 2 pieces of paper. I just decided to use double-sided tape to stick my scrapbook paper down to the canvases. So I'm using my ATG gun here, but I know the Dollar Tree also sells some double-sided tape in their Crafter's Square section, or you could use any kind of adhesive that you're comfortable with. I probably just wouldn't use hot glue for this one because I think with the paper being a little bit thinner, if you put some hot glue on the back of it, I think you would see the lines of the hot glue. So that's why I chose to use the double-sided tape instead of hot glue. And you can see here, I'm just using my bone folder to really burnish that paper down onto the canvas, just to make sure that that adhesive really adheres well to the canvas itself. So once I had the paper on both of the canvases, then I just went in with my hot glue gun and I ran a little bit of hot glue along the backside frame of the smaller canvas, and then I just centered it right on top of the larger canvas. You could measure this if you wanted to, but I just kind of eyeballed it. One great thing about paper collections like this is they usually have 1 or 2 sheets of cut apart pictures, and then it usually has some kind of sticker sheet in it also. So I took one of the cut apart sheets that came with this paper collection and I picked out one of the designs that I liked the best. I'm cutting out the one that has the little wreath that says Fall Blessings. And this is a great way to make some really quick crafts because since they kind of already did the work for you when they made the design on the cut apart, then you don't have to worry about trying to style something in the center of your canvases. Now this next step is kind of optional. I decided to use my corner rounder just to round the corners a little bit on that cut apart sheet. And then I did go ahead and ink the edges a little bit, even though this card was already brown. Whenever you cut cardstock like that, you can usually see the white edge from where you cut. So that's why I like to run a little bit of ink around the edges just to cover up that white line that you see from where you cut the cut apart. So to add just a little bit more dimension to this cut apart sheet, I'm using these foam mounting squares that you can find at the Dollar Tree. These are actually the Super Glue brand of mounting squares, so they have a really good hold to them. And whenever I stick down cut aparts like this, I like to put a lot of squares on the back because then I don't have to worry about the paper kind of warping in the center because I put 2 of the foam squares in the center also. I think these canvases look really nice how they are, but I decided to embellish it just a little bit more, and I used some of this berry garland that you can find at the Dollar Tree, and I kind of wrapped it around a paint jar that I had that I thought would make a good size because I wanted to be able to see that design on that cut apart. So I wanted my little mini berry garland wreath to be bigger than the design on the cut apart. And then I just finished it off with a simple jute bow. I love how this came out. And I always love to use scrapbook paper in my crafting because it's such an easy way to customize pieces for any season or any holiday or any type of decor style. So I really love using scrapbook paper in my crafting. You'll have to let me know in the comments what you think of this one. This next project was inspired by this leather leaf garland that I saw at Hobby Lobby about a month ago. I'm using 2 sheets of the faux leather that the Dollar Tree had sold. These sheets were made to use with a Cricut, so I chose the brown and the white. And then I know the Dollar Tree always sells nautical rope, but I found this thinner rope on Amazon and I just compared it there so you could see how it was just a little bit thinner than the nautical rope that the Dollar Tree sells, but you could definitely still use that too. So to get started with the garland, I measured out about 12 inches from the end of the rope, and that's where I decided to start my first leaf. Now, like I mentioned before, I went ahead and cut leaves out using my Cricut, but if you don't have a Cricut, you could find a leaf shape that you like online and just trace it and cut it out of the leather. Or if you didn't have leather, you could also do the same thing just using felt or any kind of material, or even the silk leaves that you can find on the faux plants I think would look really cute as a garland too. So I'm just hot gluing the stems of these leaves right to this nautical rope. And I'm using my ruler just to make sure that I have them all spaced out evenly. I think I went about 4 inches in between each stem. Now the stems on my leaves were long enough that I could just kind of roll them right around the edge of the rope there. And the picture I showed you, it had a little bit of a metal detail on it. I think it was like a button or a clasp. But the leaves that I cut out with my machine, they weren't quite wide enough to do that. But if you were going to trace them and do your own leaf, you could definitely make the leaf stems wide enough that you could add like a little fake button on them too. To give a nice finished edge to this garland, I decided to measure down about 2 inches from the edge, and then I folded it in half and I glued the 2 ends together. And then that way it created a little bit of a loop on the end. And then I just took some of my regular jute twine and I kind of wrapped it around about a 1/2 inch from where the 2 ends met. That way it kind of gave it a nice finished look. And then this way, since there's a loop on the end, if you wanted to hang it up you could, or since the end is just nice and finished, if you were just draping it across something, you would have a nice finished edge instead of just the edge of the raw rope. And then I just went ahead and repeated that on the other side of the garland too. So what's great about this garland is that you can make it any length you want. And then, like I said, if you didn't have the leather, you could use felt, you could use a bunch of different materials. But I also think just hot gluing the silk leaves that you can find in the fall time on rope would look really pretty as a garland as well. And you could even take it a step farther and kind of wrap a set of those fairy lights around the rope too. I think that would look really pretty too. Okay, so the last project is actually something that you could keep up year-round. I decided to make my own wooden crate because I like the ones that you can find at the Dollar Tree, but they're kind of small and I wanted something just a little bit bigger. So I'm using some of the square wooden planks that you can find at the Dollar Tree, and then I'm using these giant craft sticks that I get from Walmart. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that my favorite way to cut craft sticks is to use my paper trimmer. So I took these giant craft sticks and I cut them down to about 8 3/4 inches. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention that I'm actually cutting 9 of these craft sticks all together. Assembling the crate is pretty easy. I'm just going to start with one of the square wooden planks, and I ran the hot glue along the edge, and I kind of lined one of the craft sticks up along the bottom edge of the first wooden plank. And then once I had that craft stick in place, then I repeated the same thing on the other wooden plank. That way it kind of made it a little bit more stable to be able to add the other craft sticks. So once I had that bottom one in place, then I was able to start adding the other ones on 3 of the sides. And I did go ahead and reinforce the inside of each of the sticks, like where the sticks and the wooden plank met. I added just a little bit more hot glue just to reinforce it. But if you wanted to take that a step farther, you could also use a staple gun and just kind of shoot a staple right on top of that stick into the wooden plank, just to make it a little bit more sturdy. And then it would look kind of cool too to have those staples on there, because it would make it look a little bit more rustic around the edges of the crate. So once I had the bottom sticks in place on the 2 wooden planks, then I went ahead and moved to the top. And I wanted to make sure that those were lined up with the very top edge of the wooden planks. And I did both sides of that, and then I was able to just kind of take the 3rd stick that belonged on each side and just kind of eyeball the center of where it should be in between the 2 sticks. After I had both sides done, then I went ahead and just repeated the same process along the bottom of the crate too. But if you wanted to add some kind of floral arrangement to this, where you didn't want the slats in the bottom, you could just use a piece of cardboard or something on the bottom too if you wanted to. But I like the look of the sticks the whole way around, so that's why I chose to do the sticks on 3 of the sides of this crate. I wanted to keep the outside of the crate pretty simple because I knew that I would be leaving this up year round. So I decided to take some of the Plaster Color by Waverly, and I just gave it a good dry brushing all over the outside and the inside of the crate, because I really like that rustic kind of farmhouse look. So that's why I like to dry brush a lot of times on pieces like this, because it really fits in with my home's decor. But again, this is one of the times that you could customize this to fit any kind of decor. If you spray painted this black, it would look a little bit more modern or a little bit more industrial. So there's a lot of ways that you could change this up too to fit different styles. To create handles for this crate, I decided to use some of this faux leather ribbon from the Dollar Tree. So I started by cutting a piece that was 12 inches long, and then I just folded it in half and ran just a little bit of hot glue down the center. I didn't want too much because I didn't want there to be like a big glob in there that you could see through the ribbon. So once I had it folded it in half, then I just trimmed the edges off so that they kind of matched. And then to add a little more detail, I'm using my tiny attacher by Tim Holtz, and I'm just adding a few staples along each of the edges just to give it a little bit more of a fun little kind of embellishment on the handle. To attach the handles to the crate, I just held my roller up on the side and I added a dot of hot glue about a half an inch from each edge. And then I was able to lay the piece that had the staples on it on top of that hot glue. That way I knew it was spaced evenly on the side of the crate. I decided to style my crate. I took some books that I already had in my collection, and I removed the dust cover that was already on them, and I wrapped them in craft paper instead, and then I tied them together with a little bit of rope, and then I just slipped a fall pick inside of them. I think they look so cute, and I'm so excited to style this crate for the different seasons and the different holidays in my home. Here's a final look at all the projects today. I think my favorite is probably actually that crate. Even though it's not technically just a craft for fall, I really like how it turned out, and I really am excited about the size of it. Because I think it's a great size for on a big bookshelf or on a mantle or something like that. You'll have to let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. Alright everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, do all the things. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye!